New details tonight on an arrest in New York City. This after a young woman was killed last month inside her apartment in Tamarac.
I feel terribly bad that happened to her.
Something horrible happened here yesterday. A young woman murdered viciously in her apartment, and Broward Sheriff's deputies haven't arrested anybody yet.
Before we open this file, understand this. Some threats never stop. Some obsessions never fade. And sometimes the person watching from the shadows is closer than anyone realizes. This is Unsealed File. 23-year-old Kayla Hodgson lived a life that, on the surface, looked vibrant and full of possibility. She worked as a bottle girl in the nightlife scene of Tamarac, just north of Miami. Her job placed her in loud clubs filled with flashing lights, alcohol, and attention. Men admired her. They approached her constantly. She was noticed everywhere she went. But attention does not always bring admiration. Sometimes it brings resentment. On the afternoon of July 13th, 2022, everything changed. A man approached the apartment Kayla shared with her mother. He knocked. There was no answer. He called her phone. Nothing. Then he tried the door. It was unlocked. Inside, he froze. Kayla was lying on the floor, surrounded by blood. Deputies arrived within minutes. What they stepped into was not just a crime scene. It was the aftermath of extreme violence. Kayla's body was positioned just inside the doorway. There were multiple stab wounds. Broken glass was scattered across the floor. Blood marked the walls, the kitchen, and the hallway, revealing that this had not been a quick attack. It had been a struggle.
Pumping her chest, I seen like blood coming from her neck.
Oh my God.
A dog. Oh. A little dog.
Oh, it's like...
Yeah, look, I think of New York.
Investigators immediately noticed something disturbing. One of Kayla's fingernails had been torn off. That meant she fought back. She fought hard enough to leave evidence behind. There were bloody footprints on the floor.
Her phone was delivering it to you. Sorry. She's like my girlfriend.
No, that's fine.
Yes, she's like my girlfriend. Yes. She was her phone was delivering it to you. Sorry. She's like my girlfriend.
No, that's fine.
The trail moved through the apartment, down the stairs, and out toward the parking lot. Whoever did this had walked out calmly enough to leave a path behind. Inside the apartment, there were signs someone had tried to clean up. Parts of the kitchen had been wiped. Some broken pieces of the hookah used during the struggle were missing. Someone had taken the time to remove evidence before leaving. This wasn't panic. This was awareness. As detectives began reconstructing Kayla's final hours, they learned she had returned home after work the previous night.
A hookah, a smoking device for flavored tobacco. Glass shards were on the floor, and a portion of the base of the hookah was on the counter. It appeared that Kayla had been dragged from just inside the front door to the position where she was found, a few feet inside.
Nothing seemed unusual at first, but someone had come to that door in the early morning hours, and they hadn't come by accident. A teenage neighbor later told investigators she heard knocking around 2:30 a.m.
How do you know?
It sounds like the scene out of a horror movie. A young woman brutally murdered in what should be the safety of her own home.
I walked in and she was on the floor and I was pumping her chest, I seen.
When she looked through the peephole, she saw a woman wearing dark clothing and a mask. The woman claimed she was looking for a missing bag. She spoke briefly, then left. It was a strange interaction. At the time, it meant nothing. Later, it meant everything. Surveillance cameras confirmed it. A woman had entered the building during the night. Hours later, the same woman was seen leaving, but she looked different. She had changed clothes. She was carrying items in her hands. She had come prepared. As detectives dug deeper into Kayla's life, a pattern began to emerge. Kayla had been receiving threatening phone calls for weeks. The calls were frequent. The caller was silent at times. Other times, the voice delivered insults and warnings. Someone had been watching her. Someone had been angry. That anger led investigators to Sakina Thompson. She lived in New York. She was a nail technician. She was also involved with a man Kayla had been seeing. To Kayla, the relationship had meant little. To Sakina, it meant everything. Evidence showed Sakina had been monitoring Kayla for months. She followed her online. She sent threats. She tracked her movements. She knew where she lived. Then, records showed something even more critical. Sakina had flown from New York to Florida the day before the murder. She did not tell anyone why. She did not need to. Surveillance placed her at the apartment complex that night. Witnesses identified her. Flight records confirmed her presence. DNA evidence connected her to the struggle. She had traveled over 1,000 miles to confront Kayla Hodgson, and Kayla never survived that confrontation. Every piece of the puzzle aligned with chilling precision. Cameras captured her entering the building dressed in dark clothing, her face partially concealed. Hours later, footage showed her leaving in different clothes, carrying bags investigators believed contained evidence from the crime scene. A teenage neighbor described a masked woman knocking on doors in the early morning hours, claiming she was searching for a missing bag. That same neighbor later identified Sakina Thompson in a lineup. Flight manifests showed Sakina departing New York on July 12th and returning shortly after the killing. Rideshare records traced her movements from the airport to a hotel and from that hotel directly to Kayla's apartment complex in Tamarac. Phone data placed her device in the exact vicinity of the building during the critical hours. There were no gaps left in the timeline, no unexplained detours, no mystery locations. DNA recovered from beneath Kayla's fingernail revealed a mixture that included Sakina. That single detail spoke volumes. It meant Kayla had fought back. It meant there had been close contact. It meant this was not a distant or accidental encounter. Investigators also noted signs of staging inside the apartment. Portions of the kitchen appeared wiped down. Bloody footwear impressions were visible near Kayla's body and trailed down the stairwell. Clothing had been changed. Items were missing. The killer had not fled in blind panic. The killer had paused, thought, adjusted, and attempted to conceal. She had traveled over 1,000 miles to confront Kayla, and Kayla never survived that confrontation. When Sakina was arrested weeks later, she was still carrying the evidence of that trip. The timeline was complete. The path was clear. The motive was obvious. Jealousy, control, obsession. Text messages revealed months of hostility, threatening calls, social media monitoring, accusations, surveillance of Kayla's movements through someone else's phone. In Sakina's mind, Kayla was not simply another woman. She was a rival, a symbol of betrayal, a threat to control. During her trial, Sakina admitted she had gone to the apartment. She admitted there was a confrontation. She admitted she cleaned the scene afterward. She admitted she changed clothes and left. She admitted she discarded items in the trash. She admitted she returned to New York as if nothing had happened. But she claimed she had acted in self-defense. She testified that she only wanted to talk. She claimed Kayla attacked first with a broken hookah. She said she blacked out in fear. She described chaos, panic, survival instincts. She described protecting herself. The physical evidence told a different story. Kayla had been stabbed over and over again. The wounds were numerous. Defensive injuries showed she tried to shield herself. Blood patterns indicated movement through multiple areas of the apartment. The violence did not stop quickly. It continued. This was not survival. This was rage. Prosecutors argued that traveling across state lines in the middle of the night was not an act of peaceful conversation. Concealing identity was not an act of reconciliation. Cleaning a crime scene was not an act of fear. Disposing of evidence was not the behavior of someone who believed they had done nothing wrong. This was planning. This was escalation. This was the final step in months of growing obsession. In October 2025, the jury reached its conclusion. Guilty of first-degree murder. The deliberation was brief. The evidence was overwhelming. The motive was undeniable. The sentence was life in prison without the possibility of parole. Inside the courtroom, Kayla's family spoke of the silence left behind, the empty chair at family gatherings, the birthdays that would never be celebrated with her laughter, the future milestones that would never come. A life frozen at 23. Kayla's life ended at just 23 years old. Her future was taken. Her family was left with silence where her voice used to be. All because someone refused to let go. All because someone believed obsession gave them the right to destroy. And in the end, what began as jealousy became something permanent. A life sentence for one and a life stolen from another. The courtroom lights eventually dimmed, the media coverage faded, headlines were replaced by news stories. But for the families involved, nothing truly closed. One family lost a daughter forever. Another watched their own face a lifetime behind bars. This file is now closed, but the consequences never will be. Subscribe to Unsealed Files to uncover the next case.